Before we get started with today's video, I just want to let you all know that I actually have a new book you can read. Yeah! It's called Everything Went Black. It's a horror novella available now on Amazon. Yep, we're going straight to the publisher with this one. No need to do crowdfunding or anything like that this time around. But it's a horror novel set in England that follows a character that's an occult studies specialist thinking that she has found the find of the century, only to find that, well, it's anything but. There's more details on the Amazon page, and the other thing I also want to let you know is the other two comic books that I have published previously under my own little label are now under Grindstone Arts, my company. And guess what? You can also go and read them right now digitally. And trust me, folks, the way that I set these up through the Kindle program and the guided view, you're going to love the experience. Link for all that is in the description, plus there's a link to Black Rhapsody Book 2, a book that I'm the editor on, which is a horror take on the magical girl genre written by my protege Serena Sanchez. So go check both of them out. Links are in the description. Let's get to the video. It goes without saying that the Punisher is one of the most popular characters that Marvel Comics has ever put together. At this point in time, the guy's had 3 Hollywood films, has appeared in multiple television series, whether he's a star or simply a guest character, and he's been portrayed by actors like Thomas Jane, Ray Stevenson, Dolph Lundgren, and most recently, Jon Bernthal. One common thing with several of those actors is that their roles are based on the writing of popular comic book author Garth Ennis. Well, for the most part. It goes without saying that the Northern Irish writer has been the most noteworthy writer of the character since he started in the year 2000. Not to say that there haven't been other writers that have put forward their best efforts. Hi, Chuck Dixon, how's it going? But there's something very special about how Garth Ennis treats the character. He likes to ground him, and doesn't really write him from the angle of a superhero writer, but rather from the angle of someone who prefers to write military fiction. To me, I've always felt like this is what made this version of Frank so relatable. Keep in mind that Garth Ennis was writing these comics during the global war on terror. I can't speak for everybody, but I have several friends that served in just about every branch of the military during that time frame. In fact, it feels like half the people I went to high school with at some point ended up in the Marine Corps. Probably not accurate numbers, but it just kind of feels that way from my experience. My overall point is that when these comics were coming out, just about everybody knew somebody who served in the military, or you knew somebody who knew somebody that did. So the military culture is something that was very ingrained within day-to-day living for a lot of people. Having the Punisher be someone that took that experience as a veteran into account, and having that be part of what shaped his worldview really helped to make him feel that much more real. I mean, the character of Frank Castle within the Max comics, you could almost see existing. Almost. Now, the Thomas Jane version of Frank Castle was an operator during Desert Storm, and the most recent version with Jon Bernthal was an operator during the Global War on Terror. However, the rest of the versions seem to align with the comic books. Specifically the Max version, where Frank was a captain in the Marine Corps during the Vietnam War. Now, the Punisher Max is a comic book that really doesn't feature any other superheroes or anything like that. The most you're going to see is Nick Fury, and this sort of grounded and focused run really allowed the character to just stay the star of the show. Oh, by the way, you might be saying, Micah, what about Daredevil showing up during the Marvel Knights run? Well, that's the Marvel Knights run. It's different than Max, though it does have the same writer. And also, it's very good. I really like Garth Ennis' stuff during the Marvel Knights time. Anyway, there's a lot of great arcs within the Marvel Max run of the comics, such as Up is Down, Black is White, Kitchen Irish, Mother Russia, Man of Stone, Long Cold Dark, and Valley Forge, Valley Forge. However, in my professional opinion, I think the best arc out of the entire run is the Slavers. Now, there's a greater sort of a maxi arc that goes throughout a good chunk of this run on Punisher Max with Garth Ennis. And at some point, I will probably do a video about what it is. A lot of it ties to characters that show up during the initial arc of In the Beginning. But this particular arc in the Slavers doesn't really touch on any of it, except referencing one particular criminal named Nicky Cavella at the beginning. This is essentially Frank Castle at his most raw in regards to his actions as the Punisher and the punishment that he deals out. But we also see him in some ways at his most human, and all of this is wonderfully put together by artist Leandro Fernandez. Because of this, I declare that this is the best Punisher arc of all time. It is one of the most emotionally impactful. It is one of the prettiest to look at art-wise. It is just so well put together, and we're going to talk about it today. And by the way, when I say it's the best Punisher arc of all time, I mean no disrespect to anybody else who's ever worked on the character. Except for maybe Jason Aaron, because that guy's kind of a jerk. Anyway, allow me to break down exactly what this comic book is about, and the real-world stuff going on that it's based on.
Ah, motherfuckers!
Hey, ready to get depressed? Because there's a lot of depression here. So to set things up, The Slavers is an arc about the Romanian Mafia. Also, for some reason, I misremembered these guys in this arc as being Russians. I had memes prepared and everything. Instead, I have to sit here stuck with Romanians. I can't even make Dracula jokes because they're not from Wallachia or Transylvania. God damn it. Now, the realities of the Romanian mob are actually pretty dark. These guys have some very specific specialties. Specifically, drug running, arms running, and the theme of this particular arc, human trafficking. For those who don't know, human trafficking is a huge problem in Romania. Granted, it's a massive problem in Eastern Europe in general, with tens of thousands of people being estimated as being trafficked. Hell, one of the things that's actually happened during the course of the Ukrainian war with Russia is that Russia has abducted and trafficked children, with the current count being close to 20,000. In this particular case, they're actually throwing them into re-education camps as well, which is fucking disgusting, to say the least. This isn't the only media that's really gone over the Romanian mob or human trafficking. The movie The Necessary Death of Charlie Countryman features the Romanian mob, with Mads Mikkelsen apparently being incredible in that film. I need to watch it. Then you have films like Taken, Trade, Lilia Forever, and The Whistleblower all going over human trafficking. It's also a major plot point in the video game Ready or Not, which, sadly, they closed part of the loop by making one of the human traffickers just seem like he's obsessed with dolls. God. Jesus fucking Christ, that console update was retarded! Also, the character of Nico Bellic was involved in this trade as well, which is the reason behind his conflict with Ray Bulgarin and Dmitry Raskolov in GTA 4, with Nico also being a veteran of the Yugoslav wars, like our main villains are in the story we're covering today. Regardless, a reality needs to be discussed. Some Westerners tend to assume that once the Civil War ended here in the US, that the slave trade did too. No, it hasn't. It's never stopped. It's just flat out a black market now, and it's a special kind of evil. The MO of these groups is that they find poor or unstable families, lure them in with promises of work or romantic relationships, then effectively turn them into sex slaves. If they're not using that method, they're taking women and children from war zones and doing the exact same thing. Estimates are out there about how many people get trafficked per year, and it's estimated in the upwards of hundreds of thousands of people. And by the way, again, that's yearly. It also doesn't help that Eastern Europe has a tendency to be incredibly corrupt, so mobsters tend to take advantage of gaps in laws or simply knowing the right guy to pay off so they can turn these people out. Many women are taken from their families, raped constantly, and mentally broken, so they make what these criminal groups consider to be good hookers. Then they're sold as slaves to the highest bidder or thrown into brothels. So yeah, if you hear about someone visiting a brothel in Europe that's been under suspicion of human trafficking, now you know how that girl got there. This arc in The Punisher highlights all of that, and it's painfully obvious that Garth Ennis did his research on how these things go on. The Romanian mob has three main characters that are followed. You have Cristu, the cold and calculated guy who sees all of this like a business, his business partner Vera, who keeps all the girls in line, and then Cristu's father, Tiberu. This guy is a piece of work. He also fought in the Yugoslav wars and is a complete and total sadist who gets off on killing and just being a vile piece of garbage. Throughout the course of this, you hear or see exactly what these guys can do. They use a corrupt detective named Stu Weston to arrange for there to be a public smear campaign about Frank Castle supposedly injuring two cops, who he didn't hurt. These guys have connections in the NYPD, and worse, also say in the book that they have connections in Homeland Security. They've been taking girls since the Yugoslav wars, where they would go into a village, kill all the men and the children, and then enslave and sell off the women. They effectively took two of the most vile sins in the world, in genocide and enslavement, and found a way to make it profitable. They're evil people. And in the context of the slavers, Frank gets more information about how exactly this whole thing is going on. The depth of it. What is his reaction? He goes to a bookstore and buys an anatomy textbook. Now, for those of you who don't know, there are 3 things you can rely on with the Marine Corps. And if you've ever met a Marine, they never stop being a Marine. And God bless y'all for it. I love Marines. These guys are experts in killing things, breaking things, and getting women pregnant. In this particular case, Frank isn't looking to have more kids given past tragedies. So if a Marine is looking at an anatomy textbook, they're figuring out new ways to disassemble human beings. Again, Marines, I love you. All of you. In all seriousness, though, I wanted to go over this to set the stage for what this whole arc is about. But I'm going to do a bit of reading on the final page of the first issue of this arc, which is Punisher Max, number 25. Later on, she told me the whole story. About the day she left her village. About the old man. About Christu and Vera. About the thing her father said. About her baby. When she was done, I knew a whole lot of men would have to die.
They die. Yeah, every single one of them. No trials. No bullshit. They die.
Yeah, I can live with that.
So, fun fact, to start how this is gonna get for the mob, Frank blows off a guy's twig and berries with a 50 cal Desert Eagle. And that's one that the Tamer kills. Now, just to warn you, this is the part where I'm going to start talking about what happens during the arc. And then I'll give my final thoughts afterwards. Go to this timestamp to avoid spoilers, or just follow the chapters that are designated on the YouTube version, if you're on YouTube. For those who are going to continue, also be warned that the subject matter in this is dark, and it's heartbreaking. But the emotions that it makes you feel are why this story is so good. The story starts as most Punisher stories do. We're in New York, and a scumbag is bleeding all over the pavement. Oddly enough, it wasn't Frank who shot him, but rather a young woman unloading what looks like a 9mm into a group of gangsters. Also, can we just take a second to admire the color work on this comic? Grounded stories do best with muted colors, and man alive does Dan Brown communicate the lighting and mood so well with his work. Regardless, the girl runs out of ammo and takes off, and Frank uses the opportunity to pop a mob boss's head with his sniper rifle with, I think, is an H&K PSG-1, or it's just a G3 with a scope. But granted, the PSG-1 is just a modified G3, so whatever. Either way, Frank just fired a 7.62x5.1 NATO round into this dude's head, which means he's headed straight to the pits of hell in an express elevator. I don't know why Ennis mentions a 5.56 round, though. I guess this is just a flub he didn't catch. That, or originally in the script, Frank might have been using a modified M16 with a scope, and the artist just drew a PSG-1 instead, because admittedly, an M16 would hit him from the range he was at without much issue, provided you have an ACOG on that thing. Now after this, we're introduced to officers Russ and Miller. Russ is a gay black guy, Miller is a bit of a dumb blonde. Russ gives Miller shit for making a stupid joke based around a certain slur that'll get me demonetized, and it's pretty much the banter you would expect from a couple of honest cops. Back with the young lady, she's been cornered by the mobsters who all want to force her to give them fellatio. However, Frank Castle is here, and Frank is a Catholic, so he doesn't approve. He pulls his 1911 and drops each of them with blinding speed. One dude tries to say the Lord's Prayer, and Frank just blows his head off right before he asks for forgiveness. Now at this point, the cops show up to try to stop him from taking the girl away, but it doesn't do them any good. After this, we're introduced to Christu and Vera, who effectively run the business of the human trafficking operation. Pavla, the guy that Frank just ventilated with that rifle, was part of their organization. At this point, they're praying for two things. One, the Punisher just thinks that Pablo was a drug dealer and doesn't look further, and two, that Christu's dad doesn't get involved. At this point, they call the little shit, a detective named Stu Weston of the NYPD, to try to slow Castle down, which he tries to do with a public disinformation campaign to try to frame Frank as the kind of guy who beats up on cops. We also get some insight into why the NYPD doesn't actively go after Castle. The cops don't care. For those who don't know the comic books, Frank specifically targets the worst of the worst, especially this version. If suddenly an entire mob family gets a ye old Yeetus Deletus from the Punisher and his good friend from Vietnam, the M60, and its 7.62 by 51mm belt-fed children, the cops just write it off as a loss. Oops, I guess a bunch of mobsters just got ventilated. Oh, how terrible. Anyway, let's move on to the crimes that we can actually do something about. But the campaign continues with both Russ and Miller getting duped into it, though Lord knows they are not good at playing along. We later find out that the young lady Frank grabbed is named Viorka, and her story is heartbreaking. She was abducted from her village in Moldova, which is a small country that sits between Ukraine and Romania. After she was abducted, she was raped by 4 men constantly for 24 hours straight. If she fought or she screamed, they would beat her until she bled. After that, they said it's time to go to work. They gave her a quota, 20 men. Even if she reaches it, she'll get beaten and raped again after the same guys pound hardcore nose candy into their brains. At one point, she manages to escape, manages to get home, make it back to her dad. What does her father say to her? That she's dead to him. On top of that, she's pregnant. Same guys find her again, and they bring her to the old man. This is Tiberu, who is basically going to war with the black gangs in the area for fun. This old fuck is a sadist, gouging one dude's eyes out and snapping his neck, then unloading on his homies with an MP5. As you'd expect, Christu's worried that this is going to bring the cops around, which, yeah! Back with Viorka's story, we do find out that she did manage to have a nice healthy baby named Anna, who she sadly only got to see once a week, which of course they just let happen to keep her in line. At one point though, she does manage to escape again with her baby after being brought to New York. She meets with a social worker who tries to help, but one specialty of Eastern European crime syndicates is cybercrime. They hack the social worker's computer, find her information, kidnap the baby, and then kill the poor kid, and send a photo to the social worker. There's this panel on page 13 of issue 26 that goes over how she got the gun and everything. But this look on Frank's face, where his eyes are covered in shadow, speaks so much to the reader. Think about it if you're Frank Castle hearing this. What's the common tragedy between both of these people? Seeing your child die. He knows exactly what she's gone through, at least in that regard. So it wouldn't surprise me if hearing this story is causing him to relive those moments himself. What happens next is what you would expect from Frank Castle. Cold, calculated violence in spades. No mercy, no remorse, only punishment. Frank tries different methods of getting into their operations, but at one point, he just runs into the cops again and he knows they're going to try to move shop if he keeps going the way he's going. Funnily enough, Christu's dad actually wants to try and kill the Punisher, but Christu knows how that's going to go and just tells a bunch of hoods where to find his dad so he'll stop bringing attention to the operation. As you can imagine, that doesn't go well. Tiberu just kills them. Now at this point, Viorka tells Frank the name of the social worker that she blames for the death of her child, and Frank leaves her at a hotel with some clean clothes and food. Jen Cook, as mentioned, is the social worker that tried to help her, and she tries to get women away from the groups that do these human trafficking operations and bring more attention to what's going on so more people can be saved. She's giving a speech at a local university to a half-empty room, but one thing of note is that Frank is there in the crowd. Now, at this point, nobody is taking this woman seriously, which is a sad reflection of reality whenever it comes to people trying to bring attention to human trafficking. The NYPD wouldn't investigate the murder of Viorka's kid when she reported it. She's giving lectures to lecture halls where people are checked out completely, and she's censoring what's actually going on in these trafficking operations. Over and over again, these scumbags just get away with it. So she gives Frank the information he wants, and he's blunt with her. He can't stop all of this. But the men who did this, these Romanians, they're all going to die. Speaking of the Romanians, the organization is about to have a civil war, apparently. Granted, you just had the guy in charge try to kill the other guy in charge, who is also his dad, by sending a bunch of hoods to his house. I'd be pretty ticked off, too. Oh, you're wondering about the cops? Well, they actually got beat up by their own guys, and they're just kind of done with all the nonsense that the department is putting them through. None of that really matters to Frank, though, because he just snuck out to a house that these guys have in the middle of nowhere, drugs their food that these guys are eating, if you can call it that, systematically blows all their heads off with a shotgun, and saves a few of the girls that they've been trafficking. After this, he grabs Christu, takes him out to the woods after he tells Jen Cook where to come get the girls. It's at this point we get to see some enhanced interrogation techniques. How enhanced are we talking? Well, you know that anatomy book I talked about earlier? Yeah, while Christu was out cold, that anatomy textbook comes in handy. You see, believe it or not, it is completely and totally possible for a human being to survive with part of your intestines outside of your body. Christou is finding that out the hard way, and he bleeds out about 6 hours later. Regardless, Daddy is at Christou's country getaway, and Frank doesn't have much of his armament with him, sadly. He made a mistake because he was getting as emotional as he was, and left a lot of his guns in the vehicle that the social worker took. Now, the positive is, he has a .50 caliber Desert Eagle on him. So he blows a dude's dick off with that same .50 cal, and to give you an idea of what that would be like, I'm going to show you what a Desert Eagle does to ballistic gel real quick, so you can spend the rest of the day with your testicles hurting. Ah, ballistic castration. Personally, I think we should do it to pedophiles. Regardless, Frank manages to grab the guy's AK and open fire on Tiburu's men, but there's too many of them and they are way too organized. Keep in mind, Frank is dealing with pros here, not on par with the Marine Corps, but these guys know their way around a gun, they know basic military strategy, and it forces Frank to retreat after he kills several of them, because he takes a hit to the shoulder and several other rounds nail him in the body armor. Now, while this was going on, the social worker met with the two disgruntled cops, who are both on suspension and playing themselves up for more than what they are. Don't worry, though, it's not for anything nefarious. Frank ends up meeting with Jen after telling her to move the girls, since her car was left at the house that he attacked. She does, and then she, Parker, and Miller meet Frank at a New York diner. Also, this is a good scene to show off how much of a pro Frank is. He knows who they are since he's met them before, but he also knows that NYPD Tactical isn't anywhere near them, which is why he walks in so nonchalantly. He's consistently relaxed. He disarms a heated situation with a joke, oddly enough. Yeah, Frank Castle does have a sense of humor, and just gets everyone on the same page. As we show you bits of the conversation they have, I need to mention that this is why I really like Garth Ennis' Punisher so much. People who act like he's some sort of just plain old psycho killer don't read comics. Frank is not insane. He's a Marine, and a damn good one at that. He's honest about what he does. He kills the worst criminals out there, and does so with brutal efficiency. It's in the name. He punishes people. Thing is, beyond what he does with his life, he's a shockingly amiable person. I mean, despite what he says about saving people earlier, you'll notice he asks about the innocent women quite a bit. There's also a reason that people consider this page from Civil War issue 5 to be one of the most iconic Punisher images ever, where he's saving Spider-Man. You have Frank Castle saving the life of someone that, given certain circumstances, would try to have Frank put in prison. Why? Because at his core, Frank Castle is a man who kills, but a killer is not all he is. He's not Dexter Morgan, he's not Hannibal Lecter. He's Captain Frank Castle of the United States Marine Corps. Given the opportunity to do good, he will do it, and he will give life and limb to do it as well. Anyway, the basis of the discussion is that the cops make a deal with Frank that Detective Weston needs to be brought in by NYPD, which makes sense. Even if Frank were to kill a corrupt cop then and there, without actual evidence about what happened out in the air, it would honestly hurt more than it helps the situation. Now at this point, Frank goes to visit Vera, the money woman behind all of this, and he reveals that Christou told him everything during the enhanced interrogation, and he means everything. So, he starts chucking her into the glass window of her own office while gathering the evidence on Weston. By the way, the glass is shatterproof, and Frank says, "You'll fall apart before the glass does." It's at this point that Frank goes over this woman's methodology. Rape them to break them. Why? To show them who's in control. Sexual assault as a method of punishment and discipline. It's evil of the highest order. What happens next is fucking poetry. Frank's not a rapist. He's not going to sink to that level because that's a special kind of evil. However, Frank's not above making her realize she has no control when she's in a room with a 6'1", 220-plus pound beast of a human being. After a while, the pain just busts loose from the frame, and Vera falls to her death. To drive the point home earlier about Frank being the man he is, I love these lines in the last couple panels. It was in that moment I realized something. A dull, blurred feeling that I'd had since this whole mess began. All of a sudden, crystal clear. It had been a long, long time since I hated anyone the way I hated them. At this point, Frank only has Tiburu left to kill, so he lures the old fuck and his men into a trap. One that has 30 pounds of dynamite hidden under a manhole cover. At this point, Frank goes in with what looks like a Remington 870 tactical and a belt of shells. He cleans up a couple of scumbags after the explosion, and Tibaru, well, he runs like a little bitch. Then he takes a hostage like a little bitch. Now, contrary to popular belief, even with Frank's good aim, and even with his sidearm being there, hitting Christou clean in the head would be very risky. And Frank's not going to try to put that poor girl that is there in a situation where she can be hurt further. So, he puts the shotgun down, and drops one word in Romanian that he picked up. Now, in Romanian, he probably used the word fricos, but it's an informal way to call someone a coward. This gets Tibaru pissed off enough to lunge at Frank, which works very much in Frank's favor, considering he's a much bigger man and has such better training. So he breaks Tibaru's arm with ease, and then knees the fucker right in the mouth. Bam! Out cold. After this, Frank calls Detective Weston and gives him a location where he finds Frank and a chained-up Tibaru. He offers a deal. Give a package to the European end of the slaving operation and have the Homeland Security contact that they have get 8 visa for the girls he saved, and, well, he won't kill Weston. As for the delivery, we get one of the most brutal kills in Punisher history. Frank turns on a camcorder and then douses Tibaru in gasoline. He then gives one word of warning to the European branch of these slavers. Don't come back here. He then lights the motherfucker on fire. Burn, motherfucker, burn, a fitting end to a pile of trash. See, folks, Frank, I guess, isn't above, certain New York mandates. I think it's illegal to burn trash there. By the way, he makes Weston watch the whole thing. Not forcefully or anything like that, but he's certainly not going to let him leave the room. After that, Frank goes back to doing his thing. Anytime that these guys pop up again, he just kills them. Miller goes and joins Jen Cook in trying to help her in stopping the slave trade. Parker stays as a cop, and Weston is likely killed in Europe when he delivers the message. He's never seen again. Unfortunately, this is the sad part of the story. Of the girls that were saved, 1 girl disappeared, 1 went back to hooking, and 2 have died. 3 of them are doing okay, though. As for Viorica, she's working at a diner, and when we first see her, it looks like she's okay. But, as the book says, some days are good, some days aren't, and you can only live with the life they left you. Now, at the start of the video, and with the title, I'm saying that this is the greatest Punisher story ever told. That's a big claim, I know, especially with a run that's as legendary as Garth Ennis' run on Punisher Max. The reason that I'm so attached to this one, why I hold it in such regard, is because of the emotional weight. Obviously, human trafficking is one of the most horrifying crimes that exists. I mean, think about it. This is an industry that runs on the very worst that humanity has to offer. Drug abuse is rampant, and it's used to control the women that are enslaved. Rape is commonplace and used as a disgustingly clinical disciplinary measure, or just some sort of sick, twisted pleasure. And these organizations murder people left and right. On top of that, the level of corruption it takes to even get away with this is astounding. The fact of the matter is that any of these governments across the world where this trade is prevalent probably have people within the governments that are taking payoffs from these kinds of scumbags. Heck, I'm not a big fan of the movie Sound of Freedom, but we actually saw people in the mainstream media defending child traffickers for political points. The fact that that even happens is fucking insane. It's something that just reinforces that there is a good swath of humanity that hears about these kinds of crimes, and they just don't give a shit about it. It's one of those things that when you find out about the realities of it, it can be a bit of a mental blackpilling. So it goes without saying that it's incredibly cathartic to see a character like Frank Castle, the fucking Punisher, go in on these guys. Not to mention, he goes in about as hard, if not harder, than anybody else that he does during this entire run. But there's more to it than that. The ability to see past the killer in Frank Castle is something that I feel needs to be seen more often. I know some people aren't big fans of the John Bernthal portrayal of Frank for whatever reason, but I am, and it's for that exact reason. I don't want this character of Frank Castle to just be some sort of blunt instrument. I want to see that he's someone I can relate to as a character. I want him to be human. I want him to crack jokes. I want him to have friendships. I want him to be amicable with people that, he's going to be amicable with, to allow him to be heroic when he would be heroic, but also show exactly what he's going to do whenever he gets his hand on the scumbags that do evil things. And before somebody comes in and goes, well, you just want him to be MCU-ified. Shut up, Melvin. Enough. No, I don't. This version of Frank, like in the Max comics, is how I like him. He's definitely a Marine. He's definitely in the business of killing people. But he's capable of having friendships, capable of having relationships, so on and so forth. Do you really just want Frank Castle to just be an automaton? I don't. Even RoboCop has friends. Come on now. The fact of the matter is that Frank is a guy who loved being a father, loved being a husband, and deep down, I do think, despite his stoic demeanor, he does like people. And he likes being around them when he can. I mean, the one thing that you'll notice with him in the Max run, this is a guy who, when you see him very often, he's usually around other people. Dude loves going to diners. Thing is, he can be heroic as anybody. He also just thinks that the solution to many problems is a 7.62mm bullet coming at someone's forehead at muzzle velocity. Effectively, catharsis is one thing, but the ability to relate with the character is a whole nother thing. Honestly, Ennis could have just phoned this one in. Just had 6 issues of Frank gunning down Romanians in the most violent way possible. Left it at that, and he probably still would have sold a ton of comic books. The fact that he went to the degree to show Frank in a state where he is much more caring and honestly taking things so much more personal makes you feel like you are in there with him. And that, to me, is fantastic writing. The other thing about this arc is that it's perfect for anybody who's never read The Punisher before. This is undiluted Frank Castle. If you want to know everything that this guy is about, this comic book arc will tell you everything if you pay attention to it. Is it sad, depressing, and has a bittersweet ending? Yeah, of course. But at the same time, this is one of those comic book arcs that really show the strength of the medium, the strength of the character, and show that Garth Ennis really is one of the best writers to ever do it. On that note, I want to thank everybody for watching, and I know people have been wanting me to do some more comic book stuff for a little bit, and I love talking about The Punisher, so this was a fun one to do. If you enjoyed the video, please do not forget to like the video, share it around, subscribe to the channel for more reviews and more lore stuff in the future. With all that said, my name is Big Micah C, your favorite Vanilla Gorilla, and it goes without saying that this comic book is Vanilla Gorilla approved. I should put that on a t-shirt. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time.